Hi, I'm Rachel Linden, and I'm here at the LA Green Festival 2012, and I'm from Phoenix, so I flew in to come to the festival and to talk about GMO Free USA, which is a grassroots movement nationally to empower people in their own states to be activists in the GMO-free world. Well, I've been involved in the GMO-free movement for many years. I started in permaculture, setting up permaculture design courses in Phoenix and then LA, working to get GMO curriculum into the permaculture conversation, and then sat on the board for several years, worked with the Institute for Responsible Technology. I set up a few events, and then when Proposition 37 in California came about, Jeffrey Smith with the IRT asked myself and a friend of mine to co-tour direct his educational tour in California behind Prop 37. So we educated about the harmful effects of genetically modified organisms, specifically talking about food and specifically talking about children and the health effects that we're seeing come through doctors' offices, and it's pretty scary stuff. The grassroots movement has been going on for a long time. It hasn't been networked effectively in other states. California was a great example of how grassroots movement can really bring a cause to the forefront in a community and in a state. So we decided to take that nationally. And when I say we, Diana Reeves, a mother of 3 on the East Coast, she had a child die of cancer and decided to take a look at what happened and what were the contributing factors. And for her, she felt strongly that the GMO-free movement was a place to put her efforts and to honor her family. And so she took it upon herself to start GMO Free USA. And so she started gathering the people on state level and started networking them and telling them about each other and letting them know what each of them are doing so that they could empower themselves and become a force unto themselves. So far we are 5 digits strong, so I believe we hit 10,000 last week, and we just seem to keep doubling our numbers in short order. People just really want to be involved. It seems like the GMO-free movement isn't the kind of movement that people know about and pass up. They know about it, they understand what an important topic it is right now, how timely it is to become involved in the GMO-free movement, and how now is the time to change the tide. I think California was a perfect example of how 47% of California, 47% of 10% of the grocery market gets it. They understand the issue. Unfortunately, more than 47% didn't understand the issue. We couldn't get the message to them. And it's not over. It's a great first start, a great first effort at making labeling a common thing to happen in the United States. It's in 60 other countries. They're either labeled or banned. That's genetically modified foods, either labeled or banned. And we're working really hard to have that for our country as a whole, not just California. Oh, my personal issues. I literally don't know where to start, because I don't know what all I can blame on GMOs. Can I blame my asthma, my allergies? I had horrible seasonal allergies that would lead into lung infections, eye infections, ear infections, nose infections. I spent a good part of 10 years extremely ill. My children missed their mother for many years. I have food allergies as well, so I'm allergic to wheat and dairy. And that's actually what prompted me to figure out what was wrong with the food. I really didn't believe that I was broken. I wasn't allergic to wheat and dairy my whole life, and something changed. What changed? When did I start having problems? I look back and I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis in the 90s, and that was probably the first indication that something was happening. And we happen to know that at the same time that I was getting diagnosed with it, GMOs were hitting the market. At the time, I happened to be predominantly vegetarian, and that at the time was in soy-based diet, where I lived, organic soy was not an option. And I believe that was a contributing factor into my ultimately becoming a health issue that I could no longer ignore. It consumed my life, it consumed my family. I got to the point where I was almost bedridden. I don't wish that upon my worst enemy, and it took me a long time to dig to find out what it was happening in my body. I wanted to stop putting band-aids on the symptoms. I wanted to figure out what was the root cause. Where was it coming from? Stop it and get my health back. And it took many years doing that. I went from doctor to doctor to doctor to be overlooked, symptom treatment, antibiotic, sickness, illness. And finally someone said to me, you should talk to this nutritionist. The nutritionist took a look at me, took a look at what I was eating and said, well, you're allergic to wheat and probably dairy. Why don't you take gluten out of your diet and see what happens? And so we took wheat and gluten out of the diet. I felt a lot better. I then took some blood testing that confirmed, yes, wheat allergy, but also a dairy allergy, which I was thinking I might have had. And then I said, but why? Why am I allergic to these foods? Why am I suffering when I eat a meal? What's going on in my body? Why am I always catching what everyone else's child has? Why am I coming down with these bizarre skin irritations? And why am I constantly sneezing, nose running, ear, eye, nose, and throat infections repetitively? I can't seem to get well. What's going on? So I looked at my diet. I started reading. I got exposed to Jeffrey Smith at the Institute for Responsible Technology, and he talks about GMOs. So genetically modified organisms. And then I started looking into my diet. Where are they? What practical products? They were in almost every meal I was eating. And not just a little bit, a lot. Then I started looking at all the hidden places they were in. They were in just about every product in my pantry. So I started pulling those items out, even items that were supposedly health food items. In fact, some of those were the worst contributors to GMOs. Here it was, I was thinking I was eating all these soy products, that they were going to be good for me and great for my health. All these corn, whole grain corn products, and in reality they were full of genetically modified foods and ultimately leading to my illness. So I removed those from my diet. Started looking at nutrient-dense foods, and well, I mean, I learned how to surf about 2 months ago. So I went from being sick, not being able to get out of bed, to having a vibrant health in a very short period of time. Then I started working for the Institute for Responsible Technology, and I learned how embedded GMOs are into our grocery stores. I mean, we don't really know, but somewhere between 75 and 85% of processed foods in a grocery store contain GMOs. That was a bulk of what I was eating, but I believe my children are eating more. And how long will it take for them to start showing symptoms? So I said, okay, I'm going GMO free. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We started pulling all the products, and man, when I started pulling the products out of my pantry that my kids were eating that I had been avoiding, I said, this is huge. These products are marketing. They are targeting children. This is not okay.
Let's make a small revolution.